Welcome to the Sale and Scale Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Dmitry Smirnov, and we also got Jarn, our co host. And we're excited for today's episode. Today, we're going to be interviewing and speaking with Gina Chavellier. And she is an estates and trust attorney here in Miami, Florida. The goal of today's podcast is just kind of going over different niches, right? And specifically today is the estates and trusts side of things and how working as a solo practitioner and growing your firm with marketing works. And the idea is to get realistic because not everybody starts out with high end budgets or a lot of resources when they first go out on their own. So we want to be realistic and be able to help everybody that's starting off fresh and get some ideas on what they should be doing in order to grow their business and get to a point where they can get like Gina. Right, you have a lot of business coming in right now. You're happy with your clients, and I know you're servicing them really well. So, Gina, I don't know if you want to give yourself a little bit more introduction and talk about what you do first, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I'm as close, I guess, as you're going to get to a native South Floridian without having been born here. I was born in New York, transplant, I think, at age 2. So I've lived here most of my life. And I did not start out as an attorney in my professional career. I first started out in economics, government relations, and consulting essentially. And I did that for several years and worked as a research analyst as well. And then one day I decided to open a title company. And when I had that title company, there was somebody that told me that I didn't know what I was doing because I wasn't an attorney. And of course, I applied to law school and started the following fall. Um, so I do have an MBA in finance as well. So it really helps me understand like the bigger picture when I'm speaking with my clients. I really what we focus on is estate planning, which encompasses wills, trusts, and will alternatives in order to make sure that families are protected, that we preserve their assets, and we get that passed on either to the next generation or to whomever it is that they choose to get that passed over to. And then we do probate administration and some litigation, cutting back on that a little. It's a little stressful with all of these long held arguments that folks have. And guardianship. So guardianship is when someone does not have the ability to handle their own affairs and they didn't do the planning side of it. So they don't have their advanced directives ready, and we have to go through probate court to have somebody appointed to allow them to essentially be their voice and you know the person who is able to handle all of their affairs, health, financial, whatever it may be.
Very nice. So everything that you do is very, very important in almost everybody's family life, whether you know it
Yes.
now or find out hard way later on, I guess. Well, hopefully anyone that's watching or listening to this will actually, take that in mind and be prepared so they don't have to worry about like things like guardianship, I suppose. And definitely, I love the background story on how you got started as an attorney.
Yes,
That's
it was very interesting. And I was right, by the way, in that particular case.
Yeah. You're like,
that's
oh, I need to have a legal degree. No problem.
Exactly.
that's pretty, and it's actually pretty inspirational as well because it's like you set your mind to it and you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna prove everybody wrong entirely.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about when you did finally go out on your own. How did it start? What did you have at that point? Like you have like a backpack and a dream, that kind of thing, or how does it work?
Not quite that much. I was already married. I had 2 small children, and when I went into practice, I was working for a boutique firm, and I realized one day that in order to reach my full potential, I needed to start my own firm. There were things that I wanted to do differently. It was very scary, of course. I had just had cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, so it was the year after my surgery that I started my firm, and it really did present a lot of, I guess, looking inside, to try and get over that internal fear. I'm afraid of new things. I will tell you, I'm one of those people that I'm risk averse. And it was a little scary, but I had a few of my clients that, I had clients that came from me from the time that I had a title company, followed me when I was working at the boutique firm that I was working at,
Mm,
and then it just kept growing by word of mouth. If there's one thing that I would do differently is don't assume that it's going to be slow at the beginning, and really plan all of your processes, and put all your systems in place. Look at your technology ahead of time to make sure that you're constantly refreshing on that, because that is something that's so important.
okay, very nice. So it sounds like you had a head start a little bit with past clients from your previous work as well. So that's and I'm sure that's the case with a lot of other solo practitioners as well. They might have been in another firm. They might bring over some of their clients if they're able to, right? Um, but okay, that's good. So it wasn't just a backpack and a dream type of scenario. You actually just hit the ground running, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so how did you go about letting? Because you would say you were doing titles before that. So you just notified your clients that, hey, now I'm now also doing estate planning, and I'd love to take on the business. Or did you have to like explain? I have a legal degree now.
So it was very interesting because I did not contact any of my former clients. They just kind of followed me, found me where I was, thanks to, the internet nowadays. You can find just about anyone.
Okay.
So I had lots of folks that either found me or were referred to me by someone else, and they were like, "Oh, I know you," so it felt familiar, and it was very easy. And then as I mentioned, I did grow up here, so I have a large network of family, friends, colleagues, past colleagues. So it's kind of been very natural, organic, as they say, where people just kind of found me, and I grew into that role. So it's been very helpful.
Very good. Very good.
So,
Well, I
so
mean, it sounds like you had some fans already before you even went off on your own.
I
For people,
didn't I didn't know that at the time, but it's something. And then one of the most important things is when I was at my former firm, the main partner used to always ask me to go to this networking group called BNI, Business Networking International, and so I would always go as his substitute because he always had
mm,
something else that he had to do at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I would be there, week after week, and it helps you also get over your fear of public speaking,
okay,
and it gives you the opportunity to explain what it is that you do and how you can help people. And the more I did that, the more confident that I was. So one of the first things that I did when I had my own firm was that I joined a BNI group, which is how I met Dimitri.
hey,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
we're all BNIers here today. And for
yes.
those who are listening or watching that don't know what BNI is it's Business Networking International. It's a referral marketing organization where you have different chapters with basically uh, what would be the best way to describe it? It's basically one person per category of business types. So you'd have one estates and trust attorney, one personal injury attorney, one marketing I was a digital marketing person, one real estate agent for residential, one commercial real estate agent, etc. So the goal is you meet every week, you go to either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on what that chapter does. And you sit down, you talk about what you do. So everyone does a commercial, everybody talks about what referrals they've given to other people, testimonials for each other, right? And the whole goal of it is to build this network of raving fans, right? That all go out. So 20 plus people on a weekly basis go out and they think of you as they're dealing with their day to day business and they refer you, clients. So, so that's BNI, and then it's very powerful because not only do you make money, but You also make a lot of friends. You almost build family like bonds with a lot of the people, and it's beautiful. So anybody who has not joined a BNI and you're starting a new business, whether you're an attorney or any other industry, consider it for sure. Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I might want to add also when you as a BNI member, what you get to see is you get to see the you learn, shall I say, from the other members in your chapter, what their business world looks like through their eyes, how they approach the world, and what they're looking for within the business world and the business networking. So you kind of get to step out of your own
Yeah.
comfort zone a little bit and get to learn them.
Oh yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it gives you, it gives you a good group of trusted professionals that you can go to with questions. For example, if I have questions about insurance for one of my clients on, maybe some commercial property that they have or something that they're renting out, we have an excellent insurance person in our group. And not every group is the same. You have to find the one that works for you. But ours, it's a nice group of very knowledgeable people who I can trust, wholeheartedly. And if they have a question, they can feel free to call me. And if I have a question, I can feel free to call them. So it's kind of like uh, I don't know, like a mini learning group every week as well, because you are always learning something new, and it helps you expand your mind as to look for things that might be an issue for your clients. And it really improves the relationship with your clients as well, because you're able to give them better service.
Well,
Absolutely.
you're that it person for them that, hey, oh, do you know somebody that's a real estate agent? I got somebody. Do you know somebody that does insurance? I got somebody. Like,
Yeah.
you become that much more valuable to your client
Yeah.
because you're that connection for them to so many other people. But
So
shameless plug for BNI, obviously now. But that's
how,
because we all are involved with it, obviously. So
how long have
Yes.
you been a member of BNI?
I would say since 2016, since I started my firm. So
2016.
it's 2016. Yes.
Okay, so you've been there for a moment. Now, have you
Yes.
always been this? Has it always been the same chapter, or have you moved chapters?
I started in a different chapter, and maybe after about a year and a half or so,
Hmm.
I switched into the current chapter. I belong to a chapter called BNI Vision, and it's really, again, like I said, it has a lot to do with the personalities, with the people in the room. Some people like these huge, enormous chapters. Some people like to start out with a smaller chapter and maybe, grow that chapter. Ours is maybe mid-size, small to mid-size. We are a growing chapter, but we're selective when we bring in new people, because you also need to match the personalities that are there. You need to have kind of that consistency, and it's very collegial. There's no competition there. No one's hurting each other if somebody does something or says something that may not no longer be accurate. You can point it out to them without any feeling of animosity.
Right.
So
yeah,
I do
yeah,
enjoy that.
it's
So,
it's a good way to start for sure.
and outside of BNI, do you do any other networking or
Absolutely, absolutely. But the other ones are really attorney focused. So I belong to a group called Attorney Breakfast Club, which is fantastic. Especially, it's a group of attorneys, attorney owners, right? So all of the folks in the group have over 5 years of experience as attorneys. They own their own firm, and most are board certified in their field.
Mhm.
So we kind of sit around for breakfast once a month, and sometimes what we're talking about is human resources issues. Sometimes we're talking about insurance issues. It really helps you improve your own firm, and then you have this amazing resource of very, very good professionals to ask questions when you have, maybe you're stuck in a case, and that's especially helpful when you're a small firm, or one lawyer, one to three lawyer firm. I would say that it's very, very helpful, because uh, you know you don't always have somebody to walk down the hall and ask them, hey, in that commercial litigation case, um, I what would you do in this scenario? I'm thinking of sending somebody to a commercial litigator, but really what they needed was an insurance litigator. You kind of talk through the points, you talk through
Mm,
the issues, and it's all it's very much confidential. It doesn't leave that room, and everybody helps each other out with any legal issues that they might be facing.
Oh, that's
It's
cool.
interesting.
Very cool.
Hmm.
So,
And one other group that I belong to is Florida Lawyers Network, which I really enjoy. And that one's mostly attorneys,
Hmm.
but we have a couple of spots for people that are, I would call it legal adjacent. So we
okay.
have, we have someone that is in the court reporting, private investigator field, because that's something that we need. There,
Hmm.
we have financial advisors because we all need it, whether it's a settlement that needs to be structured properly, whether it's investments for our clients or whatever it may be, and a banker as well.
Always good
All
to have.
right.
Yes.
No, because from what I understand, there's a lot of types of law where attorneys are out of pocket, like on certain cases, but that's more like litigation related cases, correct? So they need that
Well,
bank relationship, or how does it work?
yes. So most attorneys, not all, but most attorneys will have what we call an IOTA account. It's an interest on trust attorneys trust accounts. That's what it stands for. And
Mhm,
essentially, if your bank does not know how to manage that, that's problematic. You need to make sure that you're with a bank that understands how
mhm,
to manage those types of accounts. And the Florida bar has very specific rules for that, so they have to be very much up to date with that and understand, you can't charge fees from that account. It has to come from this account. Um, and then, when personal injury attorneys need financing, maybe for a case, those bankers can help them out. Litigation financing, a lot of that, a lot of attorneys do turn to that. Uh, and then, simply just for our own banking as attorneys,
mhm,
as professionals, but many times for our clients. Like in probate and guardianship in Florida, instead of posting a bond, we can do something called a restricted depository account. So I need to have a bank that understands how to deal with that. Unfortunately, you cannot go with the big national banks on those because they mess it up, right, left, and center. So they really do. They don't understand that they actually have to follow the court order, which is a challenge for many of us probate attorneys. Will have to file motions to compel them to follow the judge's orders, but they're getting slightly better with it. But in order to establish those restricted depositories, you really need a local relationship. So a good local banker is really necessary in those types of cases.
Understood.
very cool.
Cool.
Very cool.
Huh.
It's a nice little insight
Yeah.
into some of the legal world that like we normally don't get to see.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes,
well,
I'm
so
drawing back the curtain.
yeah, well, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit more. So besides networking, right? So BNI networking, having your own network of people that you reached out to or that already know you, right? How else have you been able to get business? Do attorneys like to refer to each other a lot? How does that work?
Yes, yes, they do. It's very, just as I was saying, you'll call each other up. I have an issue with this. Do you handle that? We might call somebody that's in a completely different field, and that's usually the case. Like I'll call a family attorney. Somebody will have an issue. They'll come to see me for estate planning, and they really want to make sure that their son or daughter's ex-spouse does not get a hold of their assets, because there's a minor grandchild, right? And the spouse is, creating all sorts of problems, and now they were just slapped with a lawsuit for child support, whatever it may be. So of course they'll come to me because I'm already dealing with them, and they ask me, "Do you handle this?" And I'm like, "Nope, nope, I do not handle child support issues." But I will, I'll call up a friend and tell them, "Look, this is the situation. I might have a problem, or I'm trying to work in certain language in the trust, and I want to make sure that I am not running afoul of any of the family law rules," which is very
Mhm.
important because these things intertwine. And so I'll call up a colleague that, a trusted colleague, and ask them what it is that I need to do. So typically what happens is, us as attorneys, our clients come back to us whenever they have any legal issues. But most attorneys don't do everything. And my opinion, this is obviously everybody has their own opinion, but my opinion is attorneys shouldn't try to do everything, right? Because
Yeah.
there are so many intricacies in different areas of law that it's important to become very good at, a few, not, everything.
Yeah.
And I do know, how different legal areas in the law will affect estate planning or will affect probate or
Mhm.
guardianship. But it's by interacting with my clients and interacting with other attorneys that you really develop that knowledge and you become a better resource for your clients. So when they come to you with an issue, you can identify what the issue is and what type of attorney they really need to see, and you can point them in the right direction.
Okay.
Cool.
That
So
that that's important.
so
Makes sense.
I'm gonna kind of shift gears a little bit. I'm gonna ask you a little bit more. So you are the owner of your company,
Yes.
and how many other lawyers do you have working with you that are not assist but lawyers that work for you under your company name?
So I have two other attorneys that work with me, and they're my employees.
Hmm.
Sometimes I will co-counsel on a case with another attorney if I need to take. I feel I need to take the case for the client, but I know I just don't have the bandwidth or something.
Okay.
I'll seek out another attorney to kind of work jointly on the case, and it
Mhm.
might be another firm. But typically, in my firm, it's three attorneys
Okay.
and four assistants, between assistants and paralegals. So
Wow.
Oh
So
wow.
with that's a pretty robust team. And so now from a perspective of from a marketing perspective and bringing in business, what do you find has been your most I would say in the last, well, I would say pre-COVID. I'd kind of use that as the benchmark. Pre-COVID
sure.
and post-COVID, what were you doing before COVID that was advantageous for you from a marketing perspective, and now what are you finding post-COVID? If there's any differences in how are you tackling that beast?
So pre-COVID, I would say it was a lot of in-person stuff. So I would go to meetings, I would go to networking events, I would meet people, I would talk to them, and I would, kind of feel like, oh, I can put this person together with this person. And when you help people, because I'm a problem solver at the end of the day. As I'm not really, people tell me, oh, you're an attorney. I'm like, no, I solve problems all day. So when you can identify a problem in somebody else's area,
Right.
when they're talking to you, I'm like, oh, who would really be helpful or who you should really meet. You start putting people together, and people really appreciate that, and they kind of builds goodwill, and they come back to you and they remember you. So I would go to a lot of events and I would do a lot of this stuff beforehand. I also taught at the local law school, Florida International University, so I was an adjunct professor there. I taught in the Wills Clinic. I really believe in giving back to my community
Mhm.
quite a bit. I'm also on the board of Lawyers to the Rescue, which is pro bono legal services for the homeless. We have a clinic at Camilla's house every one Saturday a month, and then we all take different cases. Attorneys volunteer. We find pro bono attorneys that would be willing to take a case. But those are the types of things that kind of just led to people giving back to each other. Putting people together. They remember your name. They come back to you, or they hear you speak and they realize that you know what you're talking about and you're willing to answer questions. So that was something that was very helpful. And then post COVID, a lot of that, initially, and I think we're kind of transitioning back to more in person stuff, but there's still an aspect of, online. People have gotten so used to it that they want
Yeah.
that flexibility. They want the ability to do that. But there's that in person interaction really makes such a difference. But it also makes people feel more comfortable being online.
Right.
So you might give a webinar. I do a lot of work for the FIU Embrace program, which is a program for families with children that have special needs, certain whether it's autism, Down syndrome, a couple of different areas, and you kind of help them plan before the child needs it,
Hmm.
uh, so that they're protected. But I give a lot of free information out. I have no problem um, doing talks on specific areas, how these things affect a
Mm.
family, and what are the steps that people can take on their own, or whether they need to see an attorney. And it's not necessarily that they need to come see me, but they need to see someone, because there are things that they need to do and they need to address. So I think education is really the best way that I've communicated to the community my knowledge,
Hmm.
and made myself, kind of the person that they want to turn to, or the person that they will refer to
Hmm.
for specific topics. So that, I think that's really more how the marketing has evolved. Where before I would have to be going around town everywhere, and now I have the flexibility of, doing a webinar. And you'll have a large group of people at the webinar, where before, the general public didn't really buy
Okay.
into that.
So with that, then,
Okay.
do you promote the webinar? Do you do any promotion for it? How do you let people know that you're hosting a webinar on a specific subject, or that you do these periodically, or you have a specific schedule to do them?
So I actually have that on the burner for 2024, to actually host them. Usually I'm invited to speak. So it's different speaking opportunities that people approach me for, and I do those. And that's been the main way of doing it. But I've attended a couple of different really good webinar development sessions,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and it really allows me to do the thing that I love to do, which is to educate people. So it gives me more of a platform. So putting that onto a schedule, and that's the idea, is to put it onto a schedule, to invite people so that they can ask their questions, and it will provide the level of education that I would want to provide to everyone, so they can see, the importance of estate planning, or the importance of selecting the proper attorney for probate administration or guardianship administration, whatever the case may be.
So I think that's a very marketing task that a lot of people don't feel is marketing, right? Which is more along the lines of PR almost, right? So you're having your own public relations, even though you might not have a PR firm doing that. You're doing your own PR in a sense by joining these other webinars, by taking on speaking engagements and things like that. So, kudos to you. You're already doing PR work without even probably noticing or realizing it.
Yes, I didn't realize it now that you mentioned it. Yes.
But, and that really does tie into a larger marketing strategy that is very successful for, certain individuals, right? It's not everybody that is loving the limelight. Not everybody wants to get on stage and speak or to get on camera, right? So, it is important that, like, people understand that everyone has different strengths, right? So if you're not the kind that goes on TikTok or to go on Instagram or online and speak, that's different. And it might
Right,
not be your
that's
thing, but
definitely not me.
I feel like you'd be great for it because you've already basically been doing it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. You're already doing it so naturally. I think you don't even realize that you're doing it. And so
yeah.
now that and just having a camera in front of you, or having it recorded, maybe I think after the first or second time you'll be so ambivalent to it that you wouldn't care, you wouldn't mind, you just continue in your own stride, and take it forward.
So
But
I'll tell you, I used to have such bad public speaking and stage fright that my voice would crack when
Hmm.
I would speak,
Wow.
because I would get so nervous. and my palms would get sweaty, the whole thing. So I guess, maybe it's having been in these different networking groups and speaking with people, and really learning the field that I'm in, that I don't feel like I'm doing public speaking. I'm just having a conversation,
Right.
and it's a lot easier for me that way.
and I think if individuals that with expert knowledge on different things, like, consider doing more of this type of work, this type of marketing, it'll go a long way because it doesn't cost you a lot to just go up on a stage and talk, right? unless you're paying for the speaking engagement, which is silly, right?
Right.
And sure, that exists, but it's not something that most of the time you'd like. In most cases, if you are openly and freely sharing knowledge, you get invited to do these types of things,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's like just taking on opportunities, kind of saying yes to things. It's a phenomenal way of engaging with the community, building trust, and building your own reputation. And at the end of the day, people want to work with you, not because you're advertising, but because they see you have something of value for them, in your head, that knowledge, right? So, and that's one of the things I feel like, there's a huge misconception with what marketing is, because not everybody understands truly what marketing is, right? Most people think of advertising when it comes to marketing. Having ads on Google, having ads in a newspaper or a magazine or a billboard, right? These are all advertising avenues, right? But like PR, speaking engagements, just sharing knowledge, this is still marketing. But in my opinion, I think that's probably the best form of marketing, because that's what gets, the real relationships created. That's what, really shows you and lets you shine more than any billboard would ever do. So,
Absolutely. And I feel a lot more comfortable with that. I'll tell you, I was approached by Florida Trend. They do an edition called Super Lawyers,
mhm.
Florida Trend's Super Lawyers. And I have been selected for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years for that by your colleagues. You know, it's typically is where that comes from. But I'm always approached by them to do advertising, and I did that. You know, the first couple of years, I bought their badges and the whole thing. But I realized that the attorneys that come up with those on those ads are usually people realize it. You know, I think the public has become savvy enough to realize, well, that's just an ad. It's not necessarily that that person is a good attorney or that they know what they're talking about. So I stopped doing that mostly because I couldn't. I guess I couldn't figure out where the value was coming from. I couldn't track the data to determine, okay, well, this is where they're coming from, this is where they heard about me. You know, I didn't really get that, so I stopped doing that. And I think it's important to be able to track your marketing spend, right? If you're going to spend dollars on marketing, you need to figure out, well, is this working? How do I measure it?
So that's a great segue into what one of my next questions was going to be,
So,
which is going to the technology, marketing analytics, and everything else. But when it comes to the marketing technology, or I guess just general technology and managing a law firm, I know there's a lot of people with case management softwares, but I know not every attorney usually has a CRM, right? So, there's the CRM. Like I give a background on, not everybody always knows what a CRM is. CRM is a customer relationship management software. It's essentially a database where you can input your client information, their emails, details about them, all the information that's relevant to you and your business, and things that you've gathered on your clients. And in the hope to, like, obviously use that for marketing purposes, for just interactions, keeping in contact, things like that, right? But also CRMs are used oftentimes as a tracking mechanism for things like source, right? For example, HubSpot, that's something that I know in marketing world we use a lot. Tools like that, where it pulls in analytics. It tells you when something came from Google Ads, something came from social media, something came from an offline source, things like that, right?
Right.
But in the attorney world, from what I've seen, not everybody really knows about CRMs or this technology. Um, Tell us a little bit more about what you've done from the beginning and how that has evolved, because I know we've had conversations off camera, obviously, where you've mentioned that you've been growing into building your own database. You've been growing and maintaining your CRM slash case management software. Like, how does that work for attorneys? And could you explain to other attorneys how and why that's really important to you? And specifically using maybe examples from your own business.
sure. So, back to like lessons I've learned. If I could stand on somebody else's shoulders and have learned the lessons from someone else that I unfortunately had to learn through smacking my head against the wall. I've gone through three. I'm on my third case management software. Okay, so the case management software also has within it a CRM component,
Mhm.
a client relationship manager. And I think as us as attorneys, we look to these software more for case management because we need to be able to keep track of our clients. When was the last time we touched this case? What's next on the case, etc. So I started with something called My Case, which many attorneys are familiar with, and then I went to something called Zola Suite, which was purchased by someone else. I don't remember what it's called now, and now I'm with Clio. And Clio has two components. So Clio has your case management. So the reason I like it is they separated it out. They have the case management software, and then they have your client relationship manager, which is called Clio Grow. And I think that was Lawmatics or maybe something like HubSpot before, where they purchased that and they were kind of integrating it. And now they've been doing a lot of upgrades. And now I just realized they have a bunch of new things that they've released there where you can track where things come from. I used to only track, who was the attorney, who was the referring attorney, because I want to thank them. Thank you for your trust in my firm and your trust in me, and to maybe keep them up to date if something, is going on with the case, to let them know, hey, thank you for referring so and so. We've been trying to reach out for them for, 6 or 8 months, and we haven't gotten a hold of them. That's particularly useful when personal injury attorneys refer me a case and they're waiting on me to do something in order for them to settle
Mhm.
their case. So we need to know who referred the case, in order to get that back out there. And that's really what I was using it for before. But now people are starting to find me on Google and different places,
Mhm.
unbeknownst to me. So my staff either inputs it, or now we're trying to move more into the technology side, because as you grow more and more, it's harder for you as the owner
Hmm.
to do all of these things. You need people to do it for you. So I don't quite have people doing that for me yet. And I still have my hand in there. So what we're trying to do is find a way to automate that so that that information comes in, they can fill out the form, and it populates into our case management software. Actually, no, our client relationship manager, our CRM, first, because those two are separate. And the reason it's separate is because before we accept a client, we need to make sure we don't have a conflict with an existing client or a
Right.
past client.
Right.
Mhm.
So it comes in there first, and that technology exists. So if there's one thing that I would tell people is start, building that structure
Mhm.
early on, because otherwise you're always going to be playing catch up. Um, you know, so if you can meet with a qualified professional who can help you set that up and get that in place properly, that's so important, because you're going to be chasing your tail some of the time.
So now, so,
Yeah.
so you mentioned that you're looking at all these things, and from your experience within your field of the law, where can you share with us where other attorneys or you yourself are finding the best footprint in today's online media? Do you prefer social media? Like, let's just say, do you find maybe Nextdoor is the better position for you to advertise on, or is it Facebook ads, or is it LinkedIn, or is it or is it a multitude of platforms?
I would say it's dependent on the area of law, where a family law attorney or an immigration attorney or a criminal attorney may do really well with like stuff on TikTok or et cetera. It depends where your target audience
Mhm.
is, and you need to know where your
Right.
target audience is. So you need to know who your target audience is. I guess that's one of the first things that you
Yeah.
try to do with them in the marketing side, right? Is
Yep.
identify who is your audience, who's your client,
Right.
who are you trying to reach with this particular ad.
Hmm.
So it's really dependent on that, because I have a tendency to deal with folks that are uh, usually, at least in their 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
But I have a higher percentage of my clientele that's in late 40s, 50s, and older. So it depends. Those are more on Facebook. So if I were to be buying ads, that would be the more appropriate place to buy them.
Right.
Um,
Who would have thought
I
Facebook would be that for that age group, huh?
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. I mean, it started out,
Yeah.
I remember when I was, in law school, it was like a college kids thing.
Yep. Yep.
But but it's really dependent on, on the area, the audience that you're trying to reach. There's no one platform. I think for any particular area of law, you need to know your area of law.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Billboards don't work for everyone, right?
No,
Billboards would
no.
never work. I don't think they would work for the area of law that I practice in, because are you really going to call an estate planning attorney because you see their face on a billboard? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But if you just had a car accident, you stopped on the highway and you look up and there's the billboard, yeah, you might be able, you might be calling that personal injury attorney.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That,
that's,
right.
you know,
Right.
and radio ads, I think, same kind of thing. It depends on the audience that you're trying to reach. So I've
Do you
next
transmission advertising, radio, TV?
I have not, unless I've been interviewed. Somebody's calling me for a story, or they're interviewing me, or asking me to do a show. That's a different story. So I have done, I've appeared on, a couple of like little local news shows
Mhm.
for the community. I've done, some small radio shows for community listeners. Those are the types of things that I've done when I've been asked, and it's really, marketing without realizing that I was marketing. Somebody needed me to talk to the group about something, and I did it. And then lo and behold, I start getting a bunch of calls, and they saw me on TV or they heard me on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Everything is really time and a place, and whoever your market is like I guess what we like to call those the avatars usually. So whoever your avatar is, they all have a unique personality, a unique place to find them, unique habits, the wants, needs, likes. So it's really about that, and that's one of the few like very rudimentary parts of marketing. It's the who, what, where, when, why, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I definitely I think that's kind of one of the things that we're also trying to do on these first few episodes here for our podcast is to really be able to differentiate because each different type of law has completely different audience, so different marketing entirely. You
Right.
so
Absolutely.
it's very interesting, and I feel like in your case, education seems to be the way to go, educating people because until I met you, I had no idea about anything that you do. I didn't know anything about trusts. I didn't know anything about even thinking about death or planning for that.
Mhm.
And it's wild to think, but it's like once you do realize it, you're like, oh crap, I need this.
Right.
And
Right.
and until somebody's in front of you telling you about it, there's no way you would even know to look for it. Unless it was the
Right.
last minute where you needed that guardianship or something like that. And at that point, it's kind of too late for the planning side of things, right? So,
Most of
uh,
the time. At least for that generation, they could plan for the next folks coming behind them.
so I think I like just from this interview, you're real like whether you understood it or realized you were doing it this whole time, but that kind of PR slash teaching slash educating role of
Right.
marketing has is what has played into your success, right?
I definitely think so. And it's a place I feel comfortable, because I feel like I'm helping a larger group of people. So it gives me fulfillment as well.
It's amazing. Very nice.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
So it came naturally to you.
uh, well,
Yes.
so all right. So now let's talk about branding. Okay, when it comes to attorneys, because obviously, as an attorney, you have everything is around the attorney, even the names of the companies. You've got like 3 4 last names and associates, whatever the name is. Always it's always about the attorney themselves, right? It's not like in marketing, like I wouldn't be like Dmitry Smirnov's marketing firm, right? It's not the same, right? So in branding for law firms, is there something like what would you say is the difference and what's important in branding for an attorney and what's not? Like what should an attorney focus on when they're branding themselves?
Well, I think you have to think about your market. You definitely need to make sure that you're not running afoul of any of the Florida bar rules, because they're very specific with
Okay.
regards to marketing. what you can and cannot do, which is one of the reasons why I really haven't done much of it. I don't ever want to put anything in print that is going to give me any issue. I remember at one time I had on LinkedIn. Remember when they used to allow you to give people endorsements?
Uh-huh.
I had so many endorsements on there about people saying I was an expert in this and an expert in that. And the Florida bar says you can't say you're an expert, you can't say that word unless you're board certified. I had hundreds of endorsements. I deleted everything. I was like, oh no, I'm going to
Oh
get in
my
trouble.
god.
I deleted everything. So that was definitely the wrong thing to do because you can't get them back once you delete them. And then, of course, the Florida bar sent, they did some kind of memo or clarification saying that those types of endorsements doesn't mean that you're holding yourself out as an expert. And
Ooh,
then, so it was
Right.
very
that's a mess.
different.
Right. The client is conveying a message. You're not
Yeah.
conveying the message.
Right, right,
So that's
absolutely.
actually very interesting. That so of course, like you cannot proclaim unless you said unless you're certified in that as an expert, you cannot claim to be but if a client writes a review and says, you know, Gina, I felt Gina's really her expertise in this was fantastic. That's
Right,
permitted.
right.
Ah.
That correct,
Wow,
correct.
so you lost all of those endorsements. Ouch.
I did, I did. It's
All right, well,
deleted
if
everything.
any of those people are listening again, go back on Gina's LinkedIn. Please add them all back. Okay. Say beautiful, wonderful things about Gina, please. And help her get those back for her marketing purposes.
Thank you.
All right. So I mean, I think today's episode is very, very interesting because it's been more about the personal side of the things. It's been more about educating and that's not always the same case for most businesses, right? You know, although I would love to, think about like let's say a logistics firm or something like that, wanting to educate everybody on it, but I feel like some industries, not everybody cares about all the details, right?
Right.
Whereas I think in your industry, the details are what really matter and the advice. So like everybody has a unique situation and like I feel like once they hear one situation they want to then compare it to their situation and learn and try to figure out what they have potentially as a case or what issues they might have with their family passing of assets and things like that. So it's definitely been different from what I anticipated for sure, right? Because obviously we're marketing and sales, but like it touches on a very unique point in marketing, I guess. So
But,
which is
I
so
would say
really
it's
happy
yeah, no,
that
it
we
was
got to do
very,
that.
very interesting to learn that sometimes uh, don't have to always follow and do what everybody else is doing. You do what works for you. As I said, you didn't even realize you're a natural at it, and you gravitate right to it. And like you said, you didn't realize you were even doing PR until that you're doing PR. So that's even better when it just comes naturally because advertising is a little bit of, as we all know, it's a little bit of a push in order to get something in return. But when advertising is natural and it comes natural, I think you even see that the return is even greater sometimes because people as you say you didn't even realize you're doing it and you're telling us all these great stories of success and they're like you're doing PR and you're like really so so you get these things out and that's something you can't teach that to another business owner
No,
it's
you've
that's
literally been your own publicist.
yeah, it's an incredibly valuable skill. So, kudos to you for just, not even realizing what you're doing, but also, as you said, you know, you don't like. You said earlier you don't like challenges, you don't like change, you don't like. But yet here you are doing all those things that is actually in reverse of that. So kudos to you for all that.
And then
Thank you.
also
I appreciate
and I think what you've been doing is kind of another thing that a lot of people when it comes to that marketing like that misconception again, people stick to buzzwords. Everybody hears SEO, everybody hears Google ads, everybody hears like all the things that's like a lot of it's noise in my opinion because every business is different. Every business has a different unique way of approaching things. Whether you have to first determine who's your target demographic. Is it easier to attain them B2B or B2C? Where are they at? Like, just because, for example, if somebody's not searching for your service, that means you need to take more about that educational route like you have, right? I'm not saying that no one's searching for what you do. I'm sure they definitely do. But one other approach is just to educate instead, because there's a huge amount of people in your market that don't even know that what you do exists,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So, I think it's great for people to understand that don't hug buzzwords just because you hear something in marketing like, oh, I have to be on TikTok, I have to be on Instagram. No, that's, pardon my French, BS. I actually,
There was a time where
you
I
know,
was very nervous because I wasn't on all the different social media. I wasn't doing these different things, but I wasn't making ads on TikTok or whatever it was, and I felt like I'm really behind the curve here. But I have to do what's comfortable for me. Maybe if my firm was much larger, that would make a lot more sense. um, and if I'm going down that growth path, then maybe that would change. But I like the personal feel of what I do, and I enjoy the feeling that I get from doing that. So it really helps me to help others.
Now,
And
so with that, I'm gonna ask you one more question. Um, with that being said, and since you have two other lawyers that work under your brand, do you guys, the three of you, ever get together, or do they mention to you, hey, how about doing X, Y, and Z kind of marketing? Or hey, do you mind if we approach it, try doing these things to bring in? Or how do you go about handling that with your employees? Because after all, they are handling cases, which is it's not just an employee. This is somebody who's having dealing with something very delicate that's part of your company.
absolutely. And the issues that we deal with, somebody's coming to us because they can't resolve this issue without an attorney, and that's why they're coming to see us. But there are, if one of the attorneys has an area that they want to go into. For example, I do have one attorney that wants to expand into a different field of law because it's something that they participated a lot in, clinics, certain type of clinics when they were in law school. And I said, yes, we can do that. But then going back to what Dimitri said about branding, should I keep it under the same umbrella, or should we create a whole new brand? Because I don't want to dilute necessarily what
mhm,
I'm known for, and I want to be able to allow her to shine in what she wants to do. So that's actually something I'm going to speak to you about in the new year, Dimitri, because I have seen this trend of law firms being named after what it is that they focus on, right? So I think it portrays a clear uh, image to the potential client. They understand what that firm does,
mhm,
and that's something that could definitely help them. But we do have conversations like that, and it's dependent on the attorneys. Some of them are really comfortable, doing those types of things, doing marketing, going out there and promoting the firm, and others are not. And at my firm, I allow them to do what's comfortable for them. So, if that's not
okay,
something that's comfortable for them, I don't have a problem with that because I love going out there and talking to people and bringing people in. So I could keep doing that all day.
right.
Thank you. Great introspection. Great introspection. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I
Thank
didn't
you.
even think about it that way because you're right. There's multiple associates or other attorneys usually in a firm, and then how does that, like, does that ever clash? Like, that's a great question actually. Now obviously we're wrapping up here because we're at 54 minutes into the podcast, but let's go ahead and end on the following. So, given your unique approach to PR, right, and relationship marketing, right? Um, what are three marketing and sales tips that you would give to a new solo practitioner going into estate and trust law? Right.
Well, I would certainly say let everybody know what you do, all of your friends, your family, your colleagues. Um, One of the things that I found really useful is maybe doing short videos on a topic of importance. You know, it, it can be posted on several different platforms. I did a couple of those videos for YouTube once when somebody was telling me, well, tell me about this, tell me about that. Let's do a couple of videos. And I did that. And, you find that number one, it informs people about what you're doing. Number two, it keeps you top of mind because even, your closest family members may not understand what it is that you do. And when they see that, whether it's on Facebook or, any of the other platforms, they're like, that's what it is. And you know what? That's exactly what I need. So let me send them over there. So that's really something that I would say is let people know what you're doing and what type of law you practice. So, and secondly, I would say, even if you think that you're afraid of public speaking, practice it because that is definitely something that comes after um, doing it a few times. The first
Exposure.
time you do anything, you're nervous.
Oh boy.
Second time, you might still be a little nervous, but by the 12th time, you're kind of like, okay, I've got this, and you can really get it done. So don't be afraid to try your hand at public speaking, whether that's through a networking group or otherwise. And then I guess third would be find yourself a good networking group, a group of good professionals that you trust that can be not only referral sources for you, but can be knowledge sources as well.
All right.
AKA join the BNI group.
Yes.
Uh,
I'll
very cool.
hold up the sign.
So,
You and I.
well,
No,
I
it
mean,
was tough.
I think those are great, great tips. So for anyone that's listening, Gina knows her stuff for sure. Make sure you do the things that she's been doing because she's been growing naturally, and which is beautiful without even needing help from guys like us that do marketing. So
Yeah.
it's really good to see those kinds of cases because most people don't know the first thing to do when it comes to marketing, and you've just been naturally marketing yourself, and you didn't even know it this whole time. So it's wonderful to see.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
That's so. I mean, that's. I mean, even from a marketing perspective, a person who's been in the creative field all my professional life, to meet somebody who just does it and it just flows. It's actually refreshing because everybody I talk to, they're like, oh my god, they're saying, oh my god, I got to do this, I got to chase down this, I got to get this technology done, I got to understand it, what's going on, I got to build this, and and believe it or not, even from a technology standpoint, from our level, we are always constantly having to evolve because technology is changing. So we're also on a in that kind of, shall we say, we're caught up in that current too. So
Absolutely. Well, we definitely are, just not on the marketing side. I will say, there's things that we are using to improve our internal processes and stuff like that, which that is, that can be challenging. And I'd prefer to be out there speaking publicly than figuring out those technology challenges that we have internally. So any
uh,
day.
that's where you get a good IT guy and a good marketing guy in the background to guide everything along.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
well, thank you, Gina. It's been a pleasure.
speaking with
Hopefully the listeners all get, or the viewers get, a good sense of kind of like your world a little bit, how you were able to go from hitting the ground running, I guess already successful from this day one, to getting to the point now you got 3 attorneys, 4 paralegals already underneath your team, and you're continuously growing, and I know you're going to do great things. So
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you.
was a
It was my pleasure to be here, and thank you both for inviting me. I wish you the best with this. And Dimitri, I will be contacting you soon because we
Sounds
do
good.
need to do some branding on that other area that I know that's not my area.
No worries. We're here to help you.